Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because we are going to completely deconstruct something you probably did just a few hours ago. Seriously, think about it. You woke up this morning and you ate breakfast. Around noon, you probably grabbed some lunch. And later tonight, you're going to sit down for dinner. You didn't even question it. You never have. It just feels like the natural order of things, right? Well, what we are going to uncover today is the everyday illusion of our daily eating schedule. It really begs a question that almost no one actually stops to talk about. Who decided you need 3 meals today? Because I can promise you, nobody decided this based on human biology. There's no medical doctor from antiquity who prescribed this, and there's definitely no ancient wisdom that just handed this exact schedule down to us. Okay, let's dive right in because your eating schedule is absolutely not dictated by your biology. The 3 meal day? It is not a law of nature. It's actually a story, and honestly, it's one of the most fascinating stories in all of human history. It's this wild tale of how civilization, industry, and, as we'll see, some incredibly clever marketing completely rewired our daily habits. Let's take a quick look at where this all started. If we rewind human history back to about 23,000 BCE, right on the shores of what is now the Sea of Galilee, archaeologists found a settlement called Ohalo II. The hunter-gatherers living there literally just ate whenever food was available. There was zero schedule because, well, there was no guaranteed food supply. Eating wasn't this structured routine, it was just the immediate result of a successful hunt. Now skip forward to around 10,000 BCE, when agriculture takes hold. Suddenly, people had a reliable food supply, cooking gets way more complex, and meals become this communal thing. But even then, a structured 3 meal day still did not exist. When you ate depended entirely on your local culture, the geography, and how much daylight you had. Take ancient Egypt, for example. Their magic number wasn't 3 at all. It was 2. Egyptians typically only ate twice a day. They'd have this light morning meal, mostly just bread and beer, and then they'd have a much heavier evening meal packed with vegetables, lentils, and whatever protein they could get their hands on. And that was the whole shebang. And then you have the Romans. Historian Caroline Yeldham points out something absolutely incredible about them. The Roman Empire was easily one of the most highly organized civilizations the world had ever seen, right? Yet they were deeply suspicious of eating more than once a day. They were practically obsessed with digestion. Their primary meal, called cena, happened around midday. Sure, they had a tiny morning snack, but it was barely even treated as a real meal. To the Romans, eating multiple meals throughout the day was just straight-up gluttony. Imagine a Roman senator looking at our modern snacking habits today. They would think we were completely out of our minds. And honestly, this one-meal model stayed dominant across a huge chunk of Europe for centuries. So when European settlers finally arrived in the Americas, you had a massive clash of cultures. We're talking two entirely different worldviews colliding head-on. According to historian Abigail Carroll, the settlers arrived with these rigid expected schedules, what they considered to be civilized routines. On the flip side, they saw Native Americans who would fast when necessary, adjust what they ate based on the seasons, and keep what Europeans perceived as chaotic schedules. The settlers actually labeled this as uncivilized, and it was exactly that cultural bias that eventually helped push the whole concept of highly structured eating across the globe. So, when did the clock actually start bossing around the plate? That takes us to 16th century Europe. The British Royal Navy was one of the very first massive institutions to formalize 3 meals a day. They served a really simple breakfast of ship's biscuits and salted meat, a main lunch midday, and a lighter dinner. But the reasoning behind it wasn't biological at all, it was purely practical. Naval work was physically relentless, and the schedule literally just had to match the shifts to provide fuel at totally predictable intervals. But the thing that truly locked 3 meals a day into the lives of everyday people? The Industrial Revolution. Starting around 1760, huge numbers of people ditched those loose, seasonal farming rhythms and started working in factories with incredibly rigid, standardized hours. You clocked in, you got exactly one break, and you clocked out. This strict industrial schedule mapped perfectly onto a 3 meal structure. 3 meals a day was never a biological discovery. It was literally an organizational hack to deal with the demands of factory life. As populations started urbanizing and moving away from farms, the morning meal specifically underwent a massive transformation. The word breakfast literally means to break the fast of the night before. But think about it. Skipping a morning meal right before you work a grueling 10 or 12-hour factory shift, that was a major health hazard. So breakfast quickly transitioned from this casual thing you might have to becoming an absolutely essential anchor of the workday. Now, this brings us to one of the most fascinating cultural shifts we're going to explore today. Back in medieval Christian Europe, eating before morning mass was actually heavily discouraged, meaning breakfast, as a full-blown meal, was very slow to catch on. But fast forward to the 1920s, and suddenly, society is aggressively pushing this idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So how exactly did a logistical break for factory workers turn into an absolute, unquestionable daily necessity? Enter the ultimate plot twist. An early 20th century cereal entrepreneur named John Harvey Kellogg. Now, Kellogg originally invented cornflakes as this bland health food meant to cure indigestion and, believe it or not, moral ailments. But it was his work and the entire industry he helped spawn that forever cemented the morning ritual we all blindly follow today. See, throughout the 1920s and 1930s, cereal companies launched these aggressively clever marketing campaigns. They specifically targeted housewives using highly persuasive radio ads and massive, colorful magazine spreads. And their main message? They heavily promoted this newly minted claim that breakfast was the most important meal of the day. They didn't do this based on some groundbreaking biological discovery. They did it because cereal companies desperately needed consumers eating their products every single morning to drive their profits. And honestly, it worked flawlessly. Let's be super clear about this. It was not pure science. It was commerce. Our entire modern morning routine, the absolute necessity of waking up and having a dedicated morning meal, was completely solidified by business interests who just needed to sell more cereal. Think about that for a second. Marketing quite literally invented the strict breakfast ritual that billions of people swear by today. So, knowing that our daily schedule was basically built by factories and then permanently cemented by cereal marketing, we kind of have to pivot back to the actual science of our bodies. Does your biology actually want you to eat 3 times a day? Well, the answer is incredibly revealing. Inside every single human being is a circadian rhythm, your body's internal 24-hour clock. And research published in the journal Current Biology shows that the exact timing of your meals profoundly affects your blood glucose, your metabolism, and even the behavior of your fat cells, right down to a microscopic level. Depending on the time of day, your body's reaction to the exact same food changes completely. In the morning, your cortisol rises and your body is remarkably efficient at processing food. Your insulin sensitivity is near its peak, easily converting carbs and sugars into usable energy. But if you eat that exact same meal late at night, the outcome changes dramatically. Your blood sugar spikes higher, your sleep quality gets worse, and fat storage increases. What this data is really showing us is that it's not necessarily the number of meals that matters. 2, 3, or even 4 meals can all work reasonably well, as long as most of your food is consumed during daylight hours, when your body is metabolically primed to handle it. Plus, your body is incredibly smart. Scientists call this phenomenon physiological food anticipation. Basically, your hunger hormones, like ghrelin and leptin, actually follow the routine you set for them. Your biology isn't just sitting there passively. It learns your specific habits and prepares for meals before you even take your first bite. So if you eat 3 times a day, your body learns to get hungry 3 times a day. You're just training it. But look, biology and commerce are only parts of the whole story. For over 23,000 years, humans have gathered around food not just to survive, but to connect. Long before factories dictated our lunch breaks and way before cereal ads told us what to eat, shared meals were doing some serious heavy lifting for human societies. Social psychology research consistently finds that communal eating builds trust, strengthens relationships, and signals safety. People who eat regularly with others report greater happiness and a much deeper sense of belonging. The 3-meal day gives us these recurring structured opportunities to do something profoundly human. So, no, the 3-meal day isn't some rigid biological law, but it's clearly not a meaningless invention either. It is the brilliant, complex result of agriculture, industry, human physiology, and yes, some incredibly successful marketing campaigns, all shaping one another over centuries. So I'll leave you with this final, provocative question. Knowing this full history of commerce and biology, how will you view your dinner plate tonight? Are you eating to fuel your biology, to connect with your family, or just because a 1920s cereal advertisement told you it was time? Something to chew on, right? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I absolutely can't wait to dive into our next topic with you.